Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. We didn't break up the show with two different segments today, with two different guests today, because Howie Karpin, the Sirius XM update anchor, a writer for NewYorkSportsDay.com, official scorer for Major League Baseball, he knows it all. And so, with the beginning of the baseball season, we figured we'd check in and find out what's going on with our Yankees and Mets. Let's just start with the news that popped out yesterday about John Sterling. The Yankees, a longtime announcer, has said he's retiring right away, like today. What do you know? What do you want to tell us about the legacy of John Sterling?
Well, end of an era, obviously, and I was fortunate enough to interact with John a number of times, and he was nice to me on the air. And when I got the scoring job at the new stadium, John would leave the ballpark and always walk by my chair, and if I was there, we'd chat a little, and he'd always say goodbye and good night, and as I said, the end of an era. I didn't really listen. Once he started, I was already in the business 9 years. So I go back to even before him. So I really didn't, I didn't really have the impact that he had on a lot of fans, over the years. But it was a pleasure to interact with him and be around him. And, I wish him the best in retirement. He's a good guy, really nice person. And I wish him all the best.
Yankees got off to a great start this year. Maybe we should ask, why was it such a good start? And then what are the pratfalls that you're concerned about as the Yankees go through their season?
Well, I've been on with you for years, and you remember I've always told you about balance, left-hand hitters, which they haven't had until this season when they added one of the best in Juan Soto, who
Right.
impacts. People do not realize, especially the analytical people, the impact of presence in the lineup. It reverberates like an earthquake graft, an epicenter throughout the lineup, and he's had that impact. So now
Excuse me, from the first day, literally
from
the
the
first
first day,
day. Yeah,
right?
go ahead. I'm sorry.
They have Soto now from the left side, Alex Verdugo from the left side, or Oswaldo Cabrera from the left side. It negates the right. First of all, you play percentages. The righties overmatch righties, and a lot of right-handed pitchers don't want to pitch to left-hand hitters. Now you saw that in the opening series against the Astros. Remember, 2 years ago in the ALCS, the Astros wouldn't even employ a left-hand reliever on their roster. They only had one lefty pitcher, and that was Framber Valdez. They had no fear of the Yankee right-hand hitters because they knew they could overmatch them. Now you saw the big difference. What happens when you have lefties in the lineup? You got to have balance in your lineup.
And now they finally have it. You believe that they have it.
They have it a lot more than they've had in years. It's a big
And
difference.
so the other part of the game, of course, is pitching. Where are the Yankees at? To me, the way it's looked, and I haven't followed that closely, but it's been kind of like this, but with some good spots. You had a good start from Nelson Cortez the other day.
Yeah, it's been a little up and down starting wise, but it's not as bad as people think. And they're hoping to get Gary Cole back. He's been starting to throw from 60 feet 6 inches a little bit. That's a big loss. If they can navigate their way through this early part of the season, get him back, they'll be in pretty good shape. They once again have a pretty decent bullpen. Over the years, they've managed to build their bullpen with pretty good arms, and that seems to be the case again. So, I mean, look, everybody's got flaws with their pitching. No one has a complete pitching staff. You try and manage and navigate, the regular season, get into the playoffs, and take your chances. And the Yankees are much improved this year than last season.
The biggest challenge in the division, I'm guessing the Orioles. They're young, they're healthy. Those guys are athletic. They can do a lot of different things. They can beat you a lot of different ways. Is that how you see the division?
Absolutely. That's the way it's shaping up. It seems to be it's going to be the Yankees or the Orioles. Toronto has a severe lack of balance in their lineup. They're predominantly right-handed. The Red Sox are not that great this year. And then, and Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay, although, they're lacking in a lot of areas, but you never count them out. But it certainly seems it's going to be the Orioles and the Yankees in the East.
What I know it's impossible at this point to look at the mid-season. What do you think at a trading deadline? What do you think the Yankees would look for, or does it really just depend on what happens? I mean, there'll be injuries. I mean, things could happen that you need to fill holes, or is there a hole right now that you think, come July 31st, they're going to need to fill?
I think it's a combination of both. See what happens, and I think their bench could be enhanced a little bit. Right now, that
Yes.
they've been a little weak defensively at certain places. Although I think that'll get better. Anthony Rizzo's made some errors. He's not that bad a fielder. I think it would be the bench and maybe adding maybe another starter if possible, or a bullpen arm when it comes down to the deadline.
Listen, everybody's going to need arms. That's the nature of the game. All right, let's go to Queens and let's talk about the Mets. They started out abysmally, but up to where we're at right now, they reached 500 last night. What do you think? Where are they going?
Well, I had them making the playoffs before the year. A lot of people think I'm out of my mind, but
Not me.
don't forget, if you look at last year, what
Yeah,
they didn't have Edwin Diaz. They had no Starling Marte whatsoever. Their pitching was in shambles. Their team, it was crippled by the injuries. They had to be improved, and now you got a year under your belt with Brett Beatty, who's showing a lot of progress. Francisco Alvarez is a really good, addition to that lineup. He's going to hit, and give you stability behind the plate. Their team is not as bad as it appeared to be when they started the season. Alonso's contract is going to be a story, but he's off to a pretty good start. Lindor's starting to come around. He wasn't going to hit 093. So, again, them also with the bench, they're going to need to enhance that and maybe add another arm in the bullpen and certainly a starter. So they're in the same boat as a lot of other teams. I see them being right in the mix.
Do you think they got enough pitching, starting pitching in particular? Every time one of those guys goes out, to me they all look like number three starters. I don't see anybody emerging as a legitimate number one starter.
Yeah, that's a good analysis. But they have a couple of young arms in the minors that might end up helping them this year. And Christian Scott and the kid Vassell. So again, you go along in the early part. There's people. It's true you can't win in April, but you can lose in April. If you have a very
Very
bad
important.
April and May, you're going to be gone. Look what happened to them last year. So the fact that they've righted themselves here at this point, 16 games in, is big. Now you want to try and build and get over 500 as much as possible, and then take your chances in the second half.
A lot of people were concerned about the manager Carlos Mendoza with little experience, of course, good experience, on the Yankees bench. Do you have a read on how well he's doing at this early point in the season, or is it too early to really get a feel for how he wants to manage a baseball game?
Well, let me just first say that the previous manager is a friend of mine, so I'm a little biased, and I thought he got a raw
A lot
deal.
of fans are biased as well, but
Yeah,
okay.
I thought he got a raw deal. Now, Carlos Mendoza's come in. He's a communicator. That's what they're saying. You got to, so far, so good. You got to give it a chance. He's made some good moves. He's made some questionable moves. That's the nature of the beast. You're always going to be criticized. But if you win, certainly people are going to be pleased.
Nobody will care. That's right.
Right. So far, so good. You can't really get a good read on it until you see him go through a whole season.
I really thought he just had a bit of bad luck that they had that issue with Reese Hoskins on the very first game, that decisions had to be made about how to deal with that kind of tension and competition, literally in the first game for a rookie manager. That is a tough thing to ask a guy who's kind of a little starry-eyed managing his first major league game.
Yeah, let me say something about that too, because a lot of people thought Luis Severino should have threw at Hoskins the next day. Luis Severino is trying to resurrect his career. He was making his Met debut. To expect him to police that issue was really unfair, And then the kid Johan Ramirez ended up doing it later on. Now everyone's quick to say, "Oh, you got to throw at him. You got to do this." You get out on the mound and try and throw at a guy. See how easy it is. Everyone's an armchair manager, a quarterback. It's not that easy. It's a difficult situation. People say, "Oh, they hit the Mets all these years." Pete Alonso stands on the inside of the plate, so he's going to get hit by pitches. Guys like that get hit. It's not because they're throwing at them on purpose. So it doesn't make sense to really start any trouble. You pick your spots in that situation.
And I appreciate what you said about Severino in that game, in that his first game, because it's not only that you got to hit him and then maybe deal with somebody charging the mound. You get thrown out of the game, and it's the guy's worked his way back, and all of a sudden the first game he ends up pitching 2 innings. That's not going to help where he's at,
Yeah. Also,
and for him that's much more important.
people made an assumption that he wouldn't get thrown out. How do you know that?
Oh,
If
goodness.
if the umps can, they don't have to issue a warning. They can throw you out if they think
Yeah.
intent. So yeah, that would have screwed up their whole pitching staff if he got thrown out in an inning.
Not to mention his career to not be able to get started. You mentioned earlier about the Alonso contract. My feeling is that they should simply just the heck with Scott Boras or any of that. Go out and sign the guy. You're not going to find a better first baseman, total package, team player, guy who hustles, certainly leads all of baseball in home runs the last 5 years, then Pete Alonso. Why don't you sign him? I'm missing why delay. That's my issue.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know how high this new regime is on Alonso. I mean,
Really?
he is up there, and he's going to be what, 29, 30 years old.
30 years old.
He's not the most athletic guy out there, but again, it's presence. His presence in the lineup reverberates throughout. Now, his fielding, he's an average fielder. He's not that great. He's not a Gold Glover, but I tell you one thing, he works at it. He comes out before the game, and he's out there taking infield. So, and he cares. I mean, he's a good guy, and he's well liked in the clubhouse, despite some media outlets reporting that he was toxic.
I couldn't even understand that.
Nonsense.
I couldn't even understand that at all. It didn't seem to make sense to me. All right, listen, we got about a minute left. You want to pick the 6 division winners?
No.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm so sorry I put you on the spot.
That's all right. I don't like predictions.
All right, fair enough.
You know the old saying, they're a crapshoot.
So you do like the Mets in the playoffs, possibly a wild card.
I think we'll see both of them in the playoffs, Yankees and the Mets.
Yankees and the Mets, Rangers.
I'm looking forward to it. They got. I
meant the New York Rangers, not the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, I know the New York Rangers.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a real shot if they clean up their bad habits of trying to make plays out of their own zone and messing around with the east-west passes near the blue line. I think they clean that up. They can beat anybody in the field.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. Listen, Howie Karpin, it's a joy to be your friend. It's a joy to be your broadcast colleague, and it's always a joy to have you on any time we can have a conversation on TV about what we love. Thank you so much. Regards to Kathy, and we'll see you around town, I'm sure.
You don't know how much I appreciate your support and your friendship. It's really
great.
Awesome.
Listen, let's get that book out there, folks. It is 976-1313. That was how Sports Phone launched careers and broke new ground. Thanks to Scott Orgera and Howie Karpin. And I guess that's it. If the curtain don't fall, the creek don't rise. We'll see you next week. Good night.